It's never about the current generation. And no, I'm not talking about 2K25. We've seen it many times, even on the channel. More and more countries are joining the World Basketball Elite. Or in other words, more and more countries are exporting talent to the NBA. However, this process isn't fast. What we're seeing now in every draft class is the result of two factors. Of course, the globalization of basketball is the first, but the country's investment in athletes is the second. Japan may be the latest example. We all saw what happened at the Olympics, right? Honestly, I thought it was a real scandal. I mean, Japan was robbed. When they had real chances to qualify for the Olympic elimination bracket, the referees were simply not fair, and that deprived them from a victory that could have been historic against none other than the host country. France ended up winning that game by 4 points, and all the Japanese fans realized that they would have had to wait 4 more years. But the process is already underway. Let me explain. There's no doubt about it. The United States has been one of the biggest cultural influences on Japan since the late 50s. What were once enemies are now two countries that have a great relationship. And this cultural influence is increasingly evident in Japan's society. Of course, one of the best products that the United States offers as a country in its cultural showcase is undoubtedly basketball. It's a very interesting situation because those who have always been interested in the sport of the orange ball have been their Asian neighbors. In fact, China and the Philippines are among the few countries in the world where basketball is the most important sport. Countries where it's considered almost like a religion. And this enthusiasm has become more and more contagious in Japan. The results, though we haven't seen them yet, or have we? At least not in the form of victories. I mean, Japan has qualified for the Olympic Games twice in a row. Both times they finished in 11th place, but let's be honest. If this year's refereeing against France had been fair, the national team would have had a chance to reach its best position ever. Not only because of key decisions in important moments, but because their best player, Hachimura, was literally ejected. And so they didn't, although they left a great image to the world despite the 0-3 record. In 2024, it just was not meant to be. They haven't had an overly good record in the FIBA World Cup either, where they've only managed 8 wins in total during their 6 appearances in the tournament over the years. Although in 2023 they achieved for the first time a positive record, that helped them get out of the group stage and enter the classification round. In fact, the highlights of the national team in that tournament went absolutely viral. And the truth is that something similar happened in the FIBA Asian Cup. Japan was a powerhouse within its continent, winning 14 medals in its first 18 participations in the tournament. However, since 2000, they haven't been able to win any. So why is that? Is it that the players are worse now? Or is it that they've been very unlucky? Or is the competition straight up getting better? The reality is completely different. Japan has what is probably the best generation in its history, but they simply haven't had the experience to prove it yet. Now, at the Asia Cup to be held in Saudi Arabia in 2025, the Japanese team will be one of the favorites to win a medal. Until recently, there were only 4 Japanese players who were able to make their NBA debuts. 3 of them weren't even born in Japan, and 2 of them obtained Japanese citizenship when they went to play overseas in the National League of the Asian country. We're talking about Nick Fazekas, J.R. Henderson, or as he's currently called, J.R. Sakuragi, and Josh Harrelson. None of them was able to reach 100 games in the best basketball league in the world, so only in the entire history of the league, there had only been one player born in Japan who had been able to reach the NBA. The 5'8" guard of the Phoenix Suns, Yuta Tabuse, played 4 games in Phoenix in the 2004-2005 season, and the list ended there. But that changed with the arrival of the best 2 talents in the country's history, Hachimura and Yuta Watanabe. These players not only managed to find regularity in the rotation of some teams, but also endured several seasons in the NBA. In Watanabe's case, the Big Wings decided to return to Japan's B-League as a superstar after having some difficulty finding a team in the NBA. Hachimura, however, is still a vital piece on the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the most important players of the team that, along with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, will try to win the championship this season. And Japan, well, it's never had such a player. But it hasn't been a matter of luck. The rise of some Japanese prospects to the elite of world basketball has not been a coincidence. The country's making considerable efforts to improve the development of its own players, and these efforts are fully visible. To realize this, we gotta talk about the B-League, its domestic league. Question for you. What would you think if I told you that in a few years, the B-League will be one of the most attractive options for American players who decide to play overseas? Do you think that's a realistic statement? Because honestly, it is. The league's able to increase its popularity in Japan at an astonishing rate, a phenomenon similar to what we're seeing with soccer in the United States. Franchises have quintupled in value over the last 8 years, which in turn has meant more revenue, higher salaries, and more prestige. Currently, there are many players who have been on the NBA radar that are now part of different rosters in the league. Cristiano Felicio, Josh Harrelson, Elise Johnson, James McAdoo, Thomas Welsh. And yeah, I know that these names are nothing to the casual fan, but the process is underway. And that's the best thing that could happen to the country if its mission is to export talent. With the arrival of international talent, the level of play goes up and standards go up, and with it, the competitiveness of the lower categories. Or in other words, the competitiveness of the next generation. And the results are already showing. Keisei Tominaga is one of the best examples. The guard who played at the University of Nebraska is one of the best Japanese prospects of recent years. After averaging more than 15 points per game in Division I, he wasn't drafted, but the Indiana Pacers offered him a contract that would ensure his presence in the summer league and training camp. Other players like guard Yuki Kawamura, who scored 29 points in the game against France just a few weeks ago, or his teammate on B Corsairs Akira Jacobs are the other prospects to keep an eye on. The future of Japanese basketball has never been brighter, and everyone knows it. In addition, the current generation has other players who have had a very successful past. There was more than one reason why the 5'6" guard Yuki Togashi was on Japan's national team despite his height. In addition to having an international background in which he's been in numerous different contexts, Togashi was part of the Dallas Mavericks roster for 6 days in 2014. He also played in the G League until he suffered a serious ankle injury, also in Italy. And just a few weeks ago, after playing against Victor Wembanyama, he left us with some of the most iconic moments in the history of the Olympic Games. This whole core is gaining experience and improving individually for a better future. Besides influencing the next generation with their play, these players are giving extra visibility to a huge market like Japan. They're raising the value of the league with the attention they generate, and soon we'll see them again in the elite of Asian basketball. In fact, as of today, Japan finds itself almost in the top 20 of the FIBA rankings, which classify the best teams in the world in a consensus power ranking. Not only that, but they're the second highest ranked team in the entire Asian continent. The first? It's not China as many of you might have thought. Japan's long since overtaken them in the rankings. Actually, we're talking about Australia, which in the FIBA context counts as part of Asia. So if we exclude Oceania, Japan's the best basketball team in the whole East. Japan already knows what it's like to send talented players to the major leagues. Baseball is one of the most popular sports in the country along with soccer, if not the most popular. So the MLB is populated with players of Japanese origin. In fact, there have already been 71. But none are as important as Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers player is considered by many fans to be one of the most skilled players of all time. One of those exceptions who's been elite as a hitter and as a pitcher. An influential player who's marked an era. But Japan's not going to settle for just that, because they're in search of their Shohei Ohtani on the basketball court. And believe me, they're a lot closer to getting it than it seems.